Hope everyone is well. So far, we have 6 people on the call. Hi, Kim. Thank you for coming. Hi, Gib. What are you fiddling around with there? How are you doing? Okay, now we have Mike Mazzara and Nadine on the line as well. And CB8 is hosting. I think Ms. Neal, I presume, is behind the hosting function here. Thank you very much.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
So tonight we're going to get an update on what's happening with Mcrown, which seems to have been stuck in the mud, but we're going to try to rock it loose and get it moving somehow. We just have to speak clearly and loudly. All right, so Gib, I'm depending on you to walk through a coherent agenda on this. Okay, go ahead. Unmute yourself. Please unmute, Gib.
I think we might be starting a little on the early side. I think our meeting time was 6:15, so maybe we want to just wait to see if we have other folks joining. Since
Okay, you're breaking up. Maybe you want to just give a little preview for those who took the trouble to come on time.
Well, actually, we're early. We start at 6:15.
We said 6:30. Okay. I'm getting different signals from my iPad. This is the first time I've used my iPad with WebEx, and it was telling me 6:15. It's 6:15. Sign on.
I think your iPad is hurrying you. What I am gonna do is try to get started on some attendance here.
Okay, that's good. So we'll always know who we're talking to. Keep along.
Yes, we have always kept attendance, and we're gonna try to honor that tradition here this evening.
Okay.
And so just bear with me because I'm entering that information as we speak.
I see Mike Mazzara and Stephanie. Mike Mazzara and Stephanie Marazzi. Okay. All right. Maybe they're not family. Who else is here? Up to 8. Okay.
It looks like I need a. It looks like I need a better email address for Mr. Mazzara. If he is listening to me and can paste his email address in the chat, that would be great.
You're picketing. I don't know if it's on my end or if it's for everybody. You're picketing. Your video, your audio is up.
I'm sorry about that. Look, there's something I can do about that. 1 second.
He sounds clear to me, if that's helpful.
Oh, thanks. That is helpful. Yes. So I see Nadine is on the call. I'm assuming that's Nadine Olsner. Is that right?
Yeah, it's actually Bill Olsner.
Okay, Bill. Okay, great.
Nadine's going to pop in, maybe in about 5 minutes.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to make sure I get you guys down for attendance.
Okay, I'm going to switch to my desktop and see if this works better. I'm going to be going for 2 minutes.
Okay. We will not start without you. Let's see. Sorry, just if you guys can just bear with us a second. We're waiting for some folks to show up. We're still a little bit early, and I am working on taking attendance. Uh, 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 okay. Hey, everybody. For those of you just coming in, we're just waiting a couple minutes for folks to join, and I'm also taking attendance, so you may hear me ask for your email address. Let's see. There's somebody logged in named Tracy. I don't know, Tracy, I don't know your last name. Could you just let me know who you are so I can make sure I've got you in our attendance sheet here?
Hi, Gib. You know me, Tracy Nottingham, Prospect Heights Community Farm.
Oh, hi, Tracy. Hi, welcome.
Second rodeo.
I don't have you down here as having been here yet, but that's okay. We're glad to have you on the call with us. Would you do me a favor and just paste your email address into the chat for me, please?
Sure, no problem. You mailed me. I came to the last meeting. You mailed me already.
I did, huh? I don't,
Yep.
but I don't have you down on the attendance sheet, so I wonder how I got an email to you. Could you?
Anyone sharing your email or any other contact or personal identifying information in the chat, please do so via a private message to Mr. Bocconi. These meetings are live streamed, and any saved chat messages do have to be posted and published online. Your private chat messages do not get saved. Please just send them as a private message.
Thanks, Julia. It's a kind of a neat trick trying to take attendance in with a WebEx, because the WebEx actually keeps changing everyone on the screen, so I keep losing my place where I go back
Only
to
when
look
the
for
meeting
her.
is over tomorrow after calls are populated, I can copy and paste all the attendees that WebEx populates from anyone that registered to attend the actual meeting. You don't actually have to register, but that's signed into the meeting. I'll be able to send that to you in a Word document.
Oh, okay, that's great. Okay, then I won't bust my pick here trying to figure out how to do it now. Thank you, Julia. I really appreciate that.
No problem.
January 27th, Mcrown meeting.
Okay, we got a bunch of folks who are joining, which is great, except we don't have Ethel, so we're gonna wait till Ethel gets back on before we get started. I see Brian Paul is here from the City Council Land Use Office. Richard Barrack from the Borough President's Office is here as well. Jonah Rogoff from the Department of City Planning is here. Fayan Batan from Sheldon LaBelle is here, who represents some of our property owners in the zone. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed here that Ethel can get her computer back. Ellie is here with his son. Hi, welcome. Julia, at some point, I've got a couple of slides here. I just kind of frame what we're going to talk about here tonight. Is it possible for, oh yeah, I have a share button, so I guess that means it's possible for me to share those.
That's correct, yes. I will be serving as the mute old person for the meeting, and that's pretty much it, just to record and to save and all that wonderful stuff. But that's just
Okay. While we're waiting for Ethel, I'll just provide maybe a little bit of history on this effort. Many of you I know, but many of you I don't recognize your names. You might be new to Mcrown. Mcrown is an initiative of aid. It's a community-led rezoning proposal for an area in Western Crown Heights that's roughly bounded by Atlantic Avenue on the north, Bergen Street on the south, Franklin Avenue on the east, and Grand Avenue on the west, with another finger along the south side of Atlantic Avenue that heads west to Vanderbilt Avenue. The community board's been working on this initiative, believe it or not, for just about 6 years now. If you just count the time in which we've specifically had an Mcrown subcommittee, but interest in this area goes back to more like 2008 and 2007, when we were trying to figure out a way to rezone this together with the Crown Heights West rezoning. And I see that Ethel is back on now. Ethel, if it's okay, get started.
Absolutely. Please proceed.
Okay. Once again, welcome everyone. Out of use committee meeting, the January and December development teams that are interested in doing now, for those of you who a year ago, we would have been telling you about how wonderful it would be when we were going to go into ULURP with the Mcrown rezoning and get it done by the end of 2020. And then COVID happened, and that changed a lot of things in New York City. And one of the things that changed was the opportunity for completing ULURP during 2021. And we were advised by the Department of City Planning in the summer that would no longer be a possibility. So the neighborhood rezoning for Mcrown is on hold. The neighborhood rezoning was proceeding along the structure set up by a framework that DCP presented back in 2018, and that the community board, Majority Leader Cumbo, and the borough president commented on in August of 2018. And those comments were later adopted formally by the membership of Community Board A as part of its amended Mcrown resolution in September of 2019. So we're here tonight because with the Mcrown neighborhood rezoning in somewhat of an have found that there are property owners are moving forward with private rezoning. We had a couple of those in the Mcrown district, and we have a couple others that have now been proposed for Atlantic Avenue. In December, we heard about 840 Atlantic Avenue, and in January, we heard from another team talking about 1032 Atlantic Avenue. So the question was raised at the January meeting: how do we address these private applications now, while the neighborhood rezoning is somewhat on hold? What I'm going to do first is just present a little bit of a frame for this discussion, and then we'll kind of open it up and have everyone sort of ask questions and contribute their thoughts. So if you just bear with me 1 second. Let's see. Hopefully, does everybody see something that looks like the beginning of a PowerPoint presentation with the wrong date on it?
Yes.
So this was obviously I've definitely I've definitely exposed the fact that I cannibalized my presentation from the April meeting where we talked about the neighborhood rezoning. So I wanted to start with just a review of the Mcrown goals. Many of you will be familiar with these, but broadly speaking, we had 4 goals. The first was to rezone the current M11 district to increase the available density for commercial manufacturing uses mixed with residential. We would like to use market rate residential development to cross-subsidize affordable housing and manufacturing. We want to see the affordability levels for that housing set based on the median income for Community District 8. And we would like to tailor the manufacturing uses in the new zone to maximize the potential for living wage jobs. This is another slide from my presentation last year. This at the time showed all of the Mcrown meetings that had taken place since 2014 through 2019. This is only the second meeting since this chart, so there wasn't a lot of other information here. But just to give you a quick refresher, we began this process in mid-2013 by looking at what our policy should be for variances in the M11 zone. DCP, around the middle of 2014, expressed some interest in doing a neighborhood rezoning. The resolution calling for a rezoning study was adopted by the community board in the spring of 2015. And then we have had a couple of amendments since then. Early in 2018, we got the rezoning framework from the Department of City Planning. So through this period of time, we've had just about a little over 200 people that have been participants in these meetings, and we've had 40 meetings of this group. So it's something that's everyone's just spent a considerable amount of time and attention on, and we appreciate everyone's involvement. This is the framework that DCP presented in the winter of 2018. We're going to come back to this in a minute, but the framework involves a number of subzones. These red areas you see are high-density commercial districts. The magenta zones are higher density contextual manufacturing districts. Here, south of Atlantic Avenue and east of Franklin Avenue, there is, east of Classen Avenue and west of Franklin Avenue, there's a medium density manufacturing district. And here, there are these 3 orange squares represent a proposed mixed-use zone that perhaps has some slightly different zoning based on whether we're talking about a north-south avenue or an east-west side street. Here, all the way on this side, we have this funky little end to this, which represents what is now 840 Atlantic Avenue. This was part of DCP's framework, with the idea that there was that there might be an argument for having that area. DCP believed there might be an argument for be zoned higher than the rest of the district along Atlantic Avenue here. Following that framework presented, as I mentioned, the community board, the city council member, and the borough president commented on it and expressed an interest in being a little more specific about the density expected and the use restrictions, the uses expected in each of the subzones. So in the commercial subzone, we called out density FAR. The 7 FAR represents a bonus for additional commercial uses. In the mixed-use subzones, we look for FAR 4 to 5 on Grand Avenue and Classen Avenue, and 3 to 4 on Pacific Street, Dean Street, and Bergen Street. As well, to a mix of light industrial, arts-related, cultural, civic, repair, and production service uses. We're not going to we're not going to dwell on use restrictions tonight because it's not as germane to the private applications at hand. On For the medium density manufacturing subzone, we look for density of 3 to 4 FAR, and for the high density manufacturing zone, we look for FAR 4 to 5. We also called for mapping MAH option 1, which calls for 25% of the residential units in an MIH building offered at an average of 60% AMI, or around $47,000 a year for a household of 3. This is not accurate, by the way, anymore. I'm sorry, I didn't update this, but 60% of AMI would not be $47,000 a year now. Now, area median income for a family of 3 is about is a little over $90,000, I think. And 60% of that would be closer to probably 60,000, probably mid 50s, not mid 40s. As I mentioned, we've had a couple private applications here. 840 Atlantic Avenue is one we heard in December of this year. The applicant, this applicant in ULURP now. You can read about it and find its documentation on DC Access Portal. It's seeking a 9.5 FAR, and again, this zone here our September 2019 resolution called for 6 FAR. So this is a big bump on that. This is 1032 Atlantic Avenue. This we heard an informal presentation on this at the January meeting, and that's calling for 8.5 FAR. So at this point, I want to just draw attention are really on opposite ends of the commercial avenue, and so if they were taken together and approved, they would certainly set the context for that strip of what's now the Mcrown district, in my view. Just a little detail on each of these. 840 Atlantic Avenue is proposing 9.5 FAR, 316 apartments, 95 affordable under MIH option 2. So they did not take our guidance on MIH. MIH option 2 is 30% affordable at 80% AMI. So this is accurate. This is the 2020 80% AMI, 92,000. I'm sorry. This is the AMI is 92,160 for a family of 3. So on average, these apartments would rent for $1,878. A 2-bedroom rent for $1,878 a month. This project is looking to have 50,650 square feet of commercial area and about 7,500 square feet of a community facility. 1030 Atlantic Avenue is proposing 8.5 FAR, 174 apartments at 60%. So the 174 apartments is the total. It's not in ULURP yet, and so there isn't a formal election, but under MIH option 1, that would be 44 apartments at 60% AMI, or option 2 would be 52 apartments at 80% AMI. They're looking for 8,950 square feet of commercial area and 7,900 square feet of community facility. And Ellie is on the call tonight, and I just mentioned I took these numbers from the presentation you had the community board. So here's just a couple of shots from DCP's website. Most of you are probably familiar with this. Just comparing the bulk in these various configurations. So this is the 6 to 7 FAR bulk that is roughly aligned with the community board's resolution regarding Mcrown and the commercial subzone. This is 8.5 FAR, which is what 1032 Atlantic is seeking. And this is 9.5 FAR. If you look at it together, this is an R8A picture. It's 7.2 FAR inclusionary. That's 14 stories. R9A, which the bulk model for 1032 Atlantic 8.5 FAR is 17 stories. And then this is R8A compared to R9. I'm sorry, this should be 9X, not R9A, which is what the comparison, which is what this picture is in the comparison for 8.4. That's 9.5 FAR and 20 stories allowed. So it's clear that both of these applications are seeking density that is that's well in excess of what the community board has adopted. From my perspective, I just wanted to considerations that I think lie and maybe we might want to keep in the backs of our minds during this discussion. As I mentioned before, these applications bookend the commercial subzone, and if they were both approved, I'm pretty sure this would force a higher density for the rest of the properties in the subzone. I think it would be very difficult to argue that properties in the middle should have the lower zoning that the community board and the elected officials have put forward. Second, the applicants are both offering significant community facility square footage, and you know, in some case, in one case, specifying a youth center as a community facility. So effectively, you know, the offer is greater density for community benefit. You may like that idea, you may not like that idea, but from a community board perspective, I want to point out that the community board has not adopted a policy regarding specific community uses in the Mcrown district. We have resolutions that talk about use groups, but we don't talk about specific goals or goals that are specific as things like getting a youth center or an arts center or something like that. And negotiating those kinds of benefits is more complicated than the use restrictions that were included as part of the Grand Pacific CBA. So although we have a model for working with developers in private applications to sort of get some of the goals of the Mcrown vision accomplished, that model would not be sufficient to try to, for instance, cover something as specific as having a youth center occupy one of these buildings, and we'd have to extend it in some way. And finally, the thing I would point out is if we thought these were great offers anyway, and we did the homework and we felt like there were community facilities you could put in these buildings, and that if we supported them on that basis, we'd have to understand that we would lack the leverage to require other property owners in the commercial subzone to provide similar community benefits. We just, you know, effectively the barn door would be open and you know, the cattle would be leaving the barn. So we would have no leverage really to try to replicate a structure like that along the rest of the street. So I guess at this point I'll turn it over to Ethel, and we can have a discussion with all of you. If you like, I can leave this picture up so we can see what it is if this helps people. If not, I'll take it down so you don't have to look at it.
No, it's okay. Leave it up. It helps to have a picture for 1,000 words. At this point, I'm going to put our colleague on the spot from DCP and ask him to say a few words about his view of how we go forward in an organized manner in the situation that we're in. Mr. Rogoff, would you care to make a statement?
Thanks, Ethel. Hi, everybody. It's good to be here. I wish we could all be here and I could join you in person. Hope everybody is safe, had a good year. I just want to start off by saying, although moving forward with a neighborhood wide rezoning within this current administration. It doesn't mean that the study is necessarily on hold. You know, we're doing a lot of work to advance certain parts of the study. So we presented on the population demographic trends last month. We're currently working with HBD and would like to come out and discuss resources. They have their own data that they can bring. So, and in addition to that, we're also looking more closely at some of the public realm improvements and urban design. So I just want to say that, you know, we are very much constrained, as you mentioned, Gib, but that doesn't mean that, you know, we don't want to make meaningful progress within the, you know, the rest of the remaining time in the administration. With respect to the private applications, I think we've mentioned this before, but it's worth restating that, you know, we're under a legal obligation to process applications, and, you know, obviously we expressed our intent to move forward with a comprehensive neighborhood-wide rezoning, which is still our interest, but obviously we just can't commit to that at the moment. But that being said, any private applications that do come before us, you know, we take very seriously and look at it closely in the lens of how they align with the framework. We ask applicants, and I'm sure Ellie and Richard Lobel and others can attest to this, to always speak early with the community board to hear your priorities, and ensure that, you know, the applications meet the vision that the community has, which we feel very strongly about. And I would also just add that whenever we are presenting to the City Planning Commission, we show them the framework, and the expectation is that these applications do align with the framework. And we memorialize that in the City Planning Commission reports as well. And then, yeah, so I think that's all I have to add. You know, I'm really curious to hear what from the private applications, or from the applicants themselves, or the owners and architects. But I'm happy to kind of discuss more and answer any questions about the zoning itself.
Thank you, Jonah. Unfortunately, we're hearing from applicants who come to the Land Use Committee a different view, or maybe they're wearing a different set of headphones when they listen to city planning, because they come in reciting, according to them, recommendations that were given to them by city planning. But at this point, I'd like to see if there are any questions from our audience on what we can do going forward. Ms. Weinstein, I see you have a question. Do you want to bring that out?
Hi, thanks, Ethel. I was just asking, you know, Jonah just explained that they always use the framework going to DCP, but the framework does not support, let's say, the building 840 Atlantic, an 18 or 20-story building. So if this is going to go through, what good is the framework? What kind of leverage can the community board, can DCP have against these private developers if they just can come in and not worry about the framework that you have all worked so hard on?
So I can speak to that, Ethel, if that's okay.
I'd like to say thank you, Gib, and I'm going to add to what I'm about to say is that we have, Elaine, we have elected officials that support us as a community. They were elected to represent the community, and we hold them to that, and they've been holding themselves to that. And I think to a large extent, we've been very lucky. Gib, you want to speak on that?
Yeah, I just want to point out, because I appreciate, may not be clear to everyone, but when the community board and when our elected officials, when the city council member and the borough president talk about framework, What we're talking about is the framework DCP presented in 2018 narrowed with the comments we made in August of 2018. So DCP has not adopted those. And one of the things that has, I mean, it's you know, there's an active and wonderful discussion going back and forth between us, but our comments are what we believe we see to make this work, and they're not necessarily adopted in full by the Department of City Planning. So, for instance, although we said that we would like to see 6 FAR with 1 FAR preferential for a commercial incentive on Atlantic Avenue, the DCP framework itself does not speak to what the FAR here should be. From their point of view, they may indeed feel that these two proposals are totally consistent with the framework, because their framework is not as specific as our framework that includes those FAR goals. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but then what is as a community board, what are our next steps? Do we push harder? Do we have legal action? Do we petition? What are our next steps?
That's kind of what we're here to talk.
May I? Yeah, we want to build a consensus during meetings like this, which would bubble up to the land use committee and then to the full board. And we go on record as a community for what we want to see happen in our community district. So I see a comment from Stephanie Marazzi on the proposal for 840 Atlantic. Ms. Marazzi, do you want to identify your affiliation with the project and put your statement out for everyone?
Sure. Hi, my name is Stephanie. I'm an attorney at Hershen, Singer and Epstein, and I represent the developer on 840 Atlantic. So I just wanted to be clear that the permit after the rezoning, if it happens, the permitted FAR would be 8.83 because a significant chunk of our site would be rezoned to R6B, which drags down the total FAR for the site to 8.83.
Thank you, Ms. Marazzi. That's a bit of a clarification. I have a land use committee member wanting to ask a question when the time is right. Since I don't know what the question is, I don't know when the time would be right, but Ms. Lazar, would you go ahead?
Yeah, thank you. I just meant whenever my turn came up, but thank you. I guess I was very disappointed when I heard the news about DCP not choosing to go forward with these environmental impact statements, et cetera, because I mean, so much work went into developing this plan for so long. And I think that, you know, there's the density issue, of course, but there's also the use group issue that just seems so important, especially the job creation factor of it. I mean, we have more people in New York without jobs than we've had in a really, really long time. And to sort of let, you know, and again, I'm new at a lot of this, so I'm still learning, but I think if it's at all possible to sort of hold out for more of the community's holistic view of how this neighborhood should be, you know, in the years coming forward, the kind of development that we actually want to have, I think it's worth it to do whatever we can to hold out for that. I mean, especially since there's you know, most of the people who are running for city council and for mayor for that matter, well, mostly for city council, most of the people running are talking about land use issues and trying to find ways for communities to have more of a say in what happens and to have growth that is better for, you know, saying that the current status quo of how we get affordable housing, et cetera, is not good enough. I feel like we're going to have potentially a more favorable or leaders with more open ears to what communities have to say in the future. I don't know. That's just my thought. I guess I hope that the next steps are things that are doable. Thanks.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Ms. Lazar. I see another question from another Land Use Committee member, Mr. Mickelsteins. You have a question?
Yes, hi, good evening. Thanks very much, Ms. Tyus. Thanks to everyone who's here, DCP, the developers, the community board. I guess I just wanted to touch on what Gib had mentioned about how these two developments kind of bookend the block, and how increasing the floor area ratio kind of sets a precedent for development between them, where you would want to, potentially upzone in between as well. I think that's a really important element to focus on, because if we do allow that extra floor area ratio, you do open up that, as I just said, that precedent element. And I kind of wanted to reiterate the importance behind that. I think it's really critical to recognize that we've set some specific goals about the floor area ratios in the neighborhood that we think are acceptable, and making that concession to me seems like it could be a slippery slope into increasing density to an infeasible level.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, Mr. Mickelsteins. We have with us on the call one of the prior private applicants, Ellie Periente, who's been very engaged with what's going on in the area. I'd like to give him a chance to speak to his new project, I believe. Mr. Periente, are you ready to do that? And then after that, I'd like to hear from the borough president's representative, Mr. Richard Barak, who is also on the call. We also have Brian Paul with us from the city council. So those are the three people I'd like to hear from next. I don't know, how long is your presentation, Mr. Periente?
I wasn't planning to present anything. I'm happy to answer any questions or sort of speak to the way, can you hear me, by the way?
Yes.
So yeah, I didn't think I was supposed to present anything tonight, but I'm happy to speak to the way we got to the zoning we got and the rationale behind it, and confirm what Gib was saying initially, that indeed the way we came up with a zoning with a zoning group that we came up with is in discussions with city planning. So I apologize for not having the numbers exactly right, because I'm not on my computer right now, but the way we initially started was that we were working off of the rezoning of the area with a plan with a higher density, the highest density on Atlantic Avenue. From all of the meetings that I've attended, and I've attended most of them for the past few years, it was always in question that it was always pointing to Atlantic Avenue having the highest density. From, I think, up to like a year ago or a year and a half ago, we were pointing to about 7.2 FAR with the MIH included, and so that this is basically the basis that we used. So when we started developing our plans, we were assuming 7.2 FAR or something in that range for the Atlantic Avenue corridor. As we started our discussion with city planning, and again, Jonah and everyone else can certainly jump in and correct me if I'm wrong. They started, on both sides, they started, the discussion geared towards the potential for slightly more density on the Atlantic Avenue, what they're calling now corridor. And this is sort of how it came up. And then around the same time, of the spring, summer, and what was happening, etc., we came up with this concept of the youth center at the base of the building that was going to be requiring more height in order to allow for like a basketball court and this sort of things. And this is sort of how the zoning boundaries came together. So just to confirm that we did follow what our understanding of the rezoning framework was, and then discussed with city planning, and then together we followed their recommendation, and they listened to our plans, and this is how we came up with a zoning. We didn't just the idea here is, and the reason why I presented last month and as early as I did, was to indeed get the feedback from the community with regards to what they want to see, right? Not only zoning wise, but also, at the base of the building, sidewalk, the youth center concept, etc. Right? We spent a long time discussing back then the uses in an Mcrown retail space, quote unquote. And so I thought that, since I was giving about 15,000 square feet community center at the base of the building, that I would, like to incorporate the community board into that decision. So, so this is, sort of how we came up with our zoning proposal. But again, it's a discussion, it's a proposal. So by definition, it's, it's open to, you guys basically are telling me what you want to see. And then we can work together. The one thing I would point out, without signing like too much of a developer, the one thing that hasn't been said on this call so far is the hardship of the economics in today's environment. I really certainly don't want to, I don't want anybody to feel bad for real estate right now, but you have to understand that from a feasibility standpoint, with the economic hardship that New York is experiencing, the vacancy rates, etc., there's something has to be said about how difficult it is to get financing for a project right now, to get backing, like the economics are extremely tight already. And so as I think Gib and Ethel know, despite what's going on, I jumped right away into starting construction at Grand and Pacific. And because I'm in the midst of it now, I realized that, those lenders and, everything that it takes to build a project are getting squeezed and are, it's getting increasingly difficult to build buildings. So without, again, sounding like, too capitalist, we have to think about the feasibility of this project when we discuss, what the community wants to see. So there is sort of a a middle between what can actually be financially feasible and what can serve the community and serve the greater purpose. So I don't know how to say it more gently, but yeah. So and again, to come back to the community center from our standpoint is between the MIH and the community center. It's a significant portion of the building that we're, for all intended purposes, sort of like giving away, because these are losing money, not making any. So so when you start adding all these things up, the slight bump of density is just an easy way to make up for it. And I will also add the same thing that I think I forgot the name, the other lady just mentioned, that the fact that half of our site is on the Pacific Street side. So it is also our proposal is 4.6 FAR. So the blended FAR of the project really also comes down to, I don't have the exact number, but I'm guessing it must be in the six and change range, because the Atlantic Avenue side is around 8.5, and then the Pacific Street side is 4.6. So that's all I have to say. I'm happy to answer any questions, but and again, if city planning wants to jump in and put in their 2 cents about their vision for the density on the Atlantic Avenue, maybe they can do that. Otherwise, I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pariente. I want to remind our audience that all of these proposals come with substantial tax relief implications, especially in times like this. So we won't forget that. I do want to hear from Mr. Barak and then from Mr. Paul, experts on the line for these types of proposals. And I just want to caution all of our neighbors who are on the line that if we work together, we have unity, we have strength and unity. We did it before, we can do it again. We want a more balanced approach to large-scale developments in our community district, which is under fire because it's centrally located, transit-wise especially. We've got fantastic mass transportation. If people become comfortable with using mass transportation again in the near future, and they will, this area is going to be is and will remain in high demand for what I've been tending to call vulture capitalists, not including Ellie Parenti at this point. So we need to stay alert to that and stick together with a rational approach to planning for large-scale development and zoning in our community district. Mr. Barak, do you have anything to add in this discussion that can provide guidance to either side?
Sure. So first off, in regard to the Department of City Planning taking on a environmental impact document, so it's not that they're not doing it at all. It's that they would need to have resources, and they would be under a next administration at the time that resources could come forward. So I think part of the community issue is awareness to their city council candidates, to the mayoral candidates. And come June, you'll probably have a better sense about the council seat. You may have a decent sense about mayor seat, so it's creating the awareness so that when there's the next administration, city planning is in position to be able to receive expense budget funds so that they could take on an environmental impact statement. In terms of Atlantic Avenue, I think the concept, and Gib touched on it earlier, was although a higher floor area ratio was there, it wasn't about a residential exclusive floor area ratio or a nominal commercial ground floor. It was more about having the incentive for a developer to have significant floor area for going above and beyond residential MIH to have commercial development, whether it be a combination of offices, retails, larger retail stores, community uses such as what Ellie just mentioned, medical community uses. So the idea was to have several floors at the base of a building as a developer incentive, although a nominal ground floor requirement for street activation other than residential. So not necessarily the 7.2 MIH residential equivalent. So I think that's an important point to think about for some of the blocks. Going further east, it was not even about housing at all, but certainly having more floor area than there is today. I'll stop at that for now unless there's any questions to respond to.
Thank you, Mr. Barak. Mr. Brian Paul from City Council staff, you add to this discussion either way?
Yeah, sure. I guess, I don't know how many of you were at the meeting last August, I believe, when Tasha Young from Majority Leader's office presented a deck about, community planning and its advantages. I guess I can revisit that really quickly, just the basic frame, of the discussion here, the pros and cons of the city, waiting for the city-led plan versus more private rezonings. About the private applications first, they can move forward quickly at no expense to the city, and applicants can make highly customized commitments, as we've seen, more customized than might, be coming in the other context. Some of the cons are, you don't get the concurrent investments all the time from the public sector, from the city, in the neighborhood resources and the capital projects from the city that come along that can come along with a community plan. As you've had much experience with, so it's memorializing the commitments from private applicants is challenging and not foolproof. And you also have this issue where the applications typically bring along neighboring properties that ULURP stakeholders don't always have the opportunity to engage with because they're just kind of riding along with the primary applicant. On the community plan side, you get the pros are the capital investments, right? The coordination, you got multiple agencies working on a unified vision for the neighborhood. The cons are we still don't know when this is happening, when the budget is going to be available to do it, and how, what's the word, responsive or cooperative city planning will be with the community's vision in the end. So that's kind of the macro framework on this discussion from my point of view.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. I see a question. I see Mr. Puka has a question. I'm not sure what it is. Mr. Puka?
Yeah, actually, it's a comment, and if I heard you, Ely correct, he said when he was planning, and this is I think is a problem, just in general. He went first to city planning, with his vision. So instead of coming to the community first, so it's almost like it's development starting with city planning first, the city first, instead of development starting with what the community wants. So I think that's somehow we have to figure out how, why have the developers come to the community first and city planning last, not go to city planning first and hear what their vision is, because their vision, like in this case, is not consistent with what the community board wants in the Mcrown. So I don't know how we change that paragraph, that where the community gets their voice first and the city comes in last. That's my first comment. My second comment is, I heard Jonas say that, we've been working, the community board is working on Mcrown, like Gibb said, since 2013. We're going on almost 7 to 8 years, and the Mcrown is not going through ULURP city planning, is not doing anything about it. But meanwhile, in Gowanus, they're proceeding forward with that rezoning. They're trying to move forward with other rezoning. So it's just a little bit, it's a shame that our community board has worked so hard on Mcrown and come up with a vision, and to have it just, I don't want to say disregarded, but put aside by city planning. That's so. Those are comments. They weren't questions. They were more comments.
Thank you, Mr. Puka. Let me just state for everyone on the call, it ain't over yet, okay? We're still in this, and we're trying to work out an equitable situation. And I think that the weight of equity is on the side of community residents. But we shall see as we go forward. The banks are retrenching, they're stepping back. So any halt or pause in lending will likely be down to the benefit of us all thinking longer and harder about what we want to see. I think the community's vision has been clearly stated. We recognize the need for additional housing for everyone across all of the economic tranches that we have in our community, mostly for those of us who are less fortunate. And given the current circumstances, there are many more of us who are less fortunate now because the businesses have had problems with revenue that have ricocheted out on all levels of government. So this may be a non sequitur, but we need to make sure our voices are heard by our current and incoming elected officials. And that's the most important thing, Mr. Puka. We need to be loud and proud. So are there other questions I'm not seeing in the chat? I want to open the floor up. Gib, do you have any more seeds of wisdom you want to plant?
You know, I think a lot of the I think what Rob said is right.
Gib, talk slower because you got a picketing effect on your audio. So you need to talk slower to give the latency a minute to catch all your words, okay?
Okay, I'll try slower. I guess the main thing I wanted to say is that please, you know, to try to pour water on these two proposals on their merits. It's simply to say in the context of, you're not able to hear me?
You're picketing, you're getting every third or fourth syllable.
Just come back to me in a minute. Let me see.
Okay, I can do that. Let me see, look in the chat and see what else there is out there. Mr. Crassus, do you have anything you want to add to the discussion? Mr. Crassus, are you there? You would have to unmute yourself. Okay, are there other questions from audience members? Okay, let me just say, okay, Sarah, you have a question now?
I do, but I think from the chat, it looks like Mr. Pariente wanted to respond to Mr. Puka. I wanted to ask a question, and then Laszlo Ciro wants to ask a question too.
Okay, Ellie, you want to go, and then Sarah, and then Ms. Laszlo? Go ahead.
So, Sarah, do you want to ask your question first so I can answer your question at the same time? Because didn't you say you had a question first?
Yeah, well, okay. So I had one question that was, so it has to do with the funding or the resources that would be necessary to complete the Mcrown zoning. I'm wondering, because I think it's pretty likely that the state is going to do some revenue raising measures in this particular session. And I'm wondering at what point would we be likely for the city to get the increased revenue and resources that we would need to do this. I'm wondering what the timing might be on this. Like the next administration, is that a possibility? And I also had a question, I guess for Mr. Pariente. So I was wondering if
Sarah, can I ask you to hold the second question?
Yes.
Give Council Member Combo's representative, Mr. Allen, a chance to answer it. Mr. Allen, can you possibly answer Ms. Lazarus' question?
It was a little choppy. Can you just repeat the question for me, please?
Sarah was asking questions about the taxation being changed and if that change would provide the missing revenue for the neighborhood rezoning to move forward, if I understood her question correctly. Ms. Lazar, am I understanding your question?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead,
Well,
Mr.
that's not a question I have, unfortunately, I have an answer to, because the conversation that was had previously with Tasha and I guess with Pariente was not when I was within the office. So that's information I have to get just caught up on. So that can be something I can broach to her, try to get that information so we can speak later. So I can try to get those answers for you, but I don't have that information at the moment to give you, unfortunately. Sorry.
Well, this morning, about 8 o'clock, Governor Cuomo indicated that he is petitioning for the change in the state and local tax allocation, or I should say, exclusion from the computation of federal taxes is being reversed. He's petitioning along with the Conference of Governors for the states that had the SALT rejected by the feds under the prior administration, that is going to be reversed in short order. So that would mean that property taxes on the state and local level would again be deductible on the federal level. So that's one thing that's what pops out. And I'm not sure if that's what Ms. Lazar was looking at, but that is going to definitely have a major effect on the numbers when people calculate what they can afford to do with their properties. So you had another question, and I'm trying to see who else is out there that wanted to ask a question. Ms. Lazar, you want to ask a second question?
Oh, well, I was wondering for Mr. Pariente, if, because, you know, the community facility idea, I guess is, you know, a thoughtful one, but the use groups, the specific use groups that the Mcrown rezoning plan was trying to get was for this light industrial uses, light manufacturing. And I was also wondering if maybe also if it would be possible to increase the amount of affordable housing that was going to be part of the project. I mean, it seems like when you ask people in this neighborhood what they want and need the most, it's you know, jobs that pay a living wage and to have more affordable housing. And I mean, a lot of the applications that come around do you know, they suggest things like community facilities or art galleries or whatever, but that's not necessarily what most people in this neighborhood are asking for. But also there's Mr. Puga's question that you wanted to respond to as well. So thank you.
Okay, so I'll respond to Mr. Puko's question obviously first, out of respect. But so, you know, your point was that we went to city plan. Why did we go to city planning first before going to the community board? And my understanding of it is that it's really more of a compliance question, compliance, you know, process, right? The way these rezonings work is that first you have to make sure that you're compliant with the rules and regulations of the city code, right? And that the you know, the height that you're proposing, the zoning code that you're proposing, the bulk and all that is legal from a city agency's perspective, right? So because let's say there's a community board somewhere that wanted to have a crazy zoning district and was supportive of it, you know, it still has to be legal vis-a-vis city planning. So my understanding is that you first have to go to city planning to make sure that what you're proposing is coherent with the zoning regulations and with, you know, the way things are being done. And then after that, you propose it to the community board. However, when we presented a zoning that was, we thought, in line with the Mcrown framework, that was our way of, you know, of coming to the community boards first, right? Like the fact that we're proposing something that is in line and that is a product of what has been discussed with the community boards for all these years is a way of you know, of following the community board's framework. And then on top of that, we presented to you guys a month ago before the city planning finished their environmental review. So really, we did do what you just suggested, which is we did come to you guys earlier in the process to, you know, not to get a vote or ask for a vote, but simply to get your input so that if we have to make any adjustments or changes to the project before it comes for a presentation, we would do so, right? So the whole point of the presentation was, hey guys, what do you think of this youth group and what do you want to see there, right? Like Sarah's point just now, maybe maybe you guys don't want to see a youth center. Maybe the retail, maybe the Mcrown uses, or, you know, the light industrial uses are bigger priority to the community board than a youth center, right? And so that was my question. You know, I know that, for example, to the city council, a a youth center is, is a significant gift, or generally speaking, when somebody, proposes a youth center, it's a more significant gift because, FYI, financially speaking, an industrial, light industrial use is not a huge concession for developer. They still collect rent. They still, it's just another form of tenants or retail tenants. But when you give it to a non-for-profit organization and you do some type of a youth center, then you're really talking about, a much bigger sacrifice. So in my view, I thought I was giving up more, because the level of rent that these guys would pay is significantly lower. But before I make the assumption that you guys are all for it, I respectfully came and asked, hey, what type of uses do you want to see there? And that was the whole point of it. So that was your first question. This that was, I think, the only question for me from Mr. Puka. And then Sarah's question was about I'm freezing right now, but Sarah, can you remind me, because literally I have my daughter screaming in the background, so I'm like I'm trying to joke. So you were saying, I'm sorry, can you remind me your question real quick?
Yeah, no, that's fine. She knows that screaming gets the job done. Yeah. No, it was whether you had thought about doing, I mean, you had started getting at the Mcrown uses and increasing the affordability and the percentage of the building that would be affordable.
Yes, so I have a question, an answer for that. So with regards to the MIH units, we proposed the option 1 because from experience with the community board and the city and the council member prefers option 1 because it offers more level of deep affordability to the most people. Again, financially speaking, option 2, which provides 30% affordable units, is actually preferable to developers usually because in the scheme of things, it's a better program. But the option 1 offers more affordability. If the community board decides that they want us to provide option 2, we're happy to do that. And for instance, on the last rezoning, one of the conditions that the community board requested was actually a mandatory option 1. So as our, under our restrictive declaration, we are obligated to do option 1. So we thought that this is what you guys wanted to see. If you want to see more and you want to do a 30% rather than 25%, I'm sure Gib and Ethel or anyone else can explain why the 30%, the option 2 doesn't necessarily accomplish, better results from an affordability standpoint. But we went for option 1 because we thought this was a preferred route for you guys.
Yeah. Option 1 is better from my point of view. I'm just saying MIH is one thing, but it's possible to do more than the bare minimum that's required by law. I'm just.
Oh, so that I don't know. I don't know that I wouldn't be able to answer. From our standpoint, we're following the city programs, and then we're doing the thing at the base, which we thought was the added. Can we do more than 25%? I don't even know. I would have to find out. But as I said earlier, then the financials of it start getting very very squeezed. So, but I misunderstood the question. And then you were talking about the Mcrown uses, and I think I sort of answered it. But then ultimately, what I was envisioning is that you guys would decide, or there would be a discussion where you say, okay, we want to ask for use group XYZ in that amount of square footage that you're allocating, and then those use groups go into the binding declaration as the use groups that we're allowed to have in that space. And if it turns out that it's more predominantly light industrial versus community benefit centers and stuff like that, then that's your decision. But basically we would sort of like take your advice or your request and then follow it. I hope that.
Thank you, Mr. Perriente. Appreciate that. Mr. Vicconi, you want to pick up from where you left off?
I hope I can. Hopefully I am being heard more clearly now. Does this sound better?
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead, please.
Okay, great. So I want to say a couple of things. First, I want to make sure everybody understands that through the Mcrown process, we've had the input of a lot of different people. This is not just those of us who are community board members explaining what it is we'd like to do. We've been really fortunate to have real estate brokers in that have participated in this discussion, affordable housing developers, and we're really fortunate to have developers like Ellie who participate in the discussion as well. And what Ellie has had to say tonight, hopefully those of you who aren't developers have been able to learn something from his comments, because you don't often get to see somebody with Ellie's perspective talking about the realities of building, like we've heard from him tonight, and especially what it's like working with the Department of City Planning and everything else. So I hope everybody sort of has taken that for everything it's worth, which is, in my view, a lot. This discussion, this meeting tonight, wasn't intended to be a referendum on the projects themselves at 840 Atlantic and 1032 Atlantic. We have other meetings for that. They'll go through the land use committee. The real question is, what do we do as a policy with these kinds of applications? The issue is not whether it would be nice to have a community center at the building at 1032 Atlantic Avenue, because probably the answer to that question is it would be nice to have a community center there. The question is, what would that do to the plan that we've sort of been working on for the last 8 years? And what it would do, in my view, are a couple of things. I mean, it would certainly put us on track to be talking about a different density along Atlantic Avenue, and I do not see that it would do anything to enable us to get the kinds of community benefits that these two applications are proposing. So while they may be valuable, I think we need to really understand that if we make a move that changes the ground rules for Mcrown, we're not going to be able to change them in a way that will come through these two rezonings that will give us any leverage to get similar types of concessions from other developers. And I think that's a very, very important issue. There's another thing I think is worth pointing out. Sarah kind of touched on it before when she talked about the fact that this is, we're in an environment where the entire government of the city of New York is up for election this year, and there's going to be lots of discussions about housing and development. The Mcrown vision is really unusual in that it's a grassroots, bottom-up proposal for a residential upzoning from a community board in Brooklyn. Community boards in Brooklyn and in New York City in general are not making these kinds of proposals right now. And the fact that we have community support for this is very, very significant. It'll help the community. Quite frankly, it helps the other property owners too realize part of the benefit of the rezoning. I am concerned personally that if we were to start playing around with this and start messaging that we support greater densities than we have been able to, than we have been talking about for the last 8 years, we could lose that support. We could lose that support, and we could become, a target in political campaigns that are going on right now. And I don't think that's worth the risk. I think that we've got a great proposal for the community and for our property owners, and I don't think we should be rolling the dice on this right now. I don't think it's the right moment personally. So my recommendation would really be that as a community board, we look to see private applicants basically fall into the line of the framework as amended by the community board, the council member, and the borough president with respect to density. I don't think, this is not a criticism, by the way, of Ellie's making a presentation to the Department of City Planning either, although candidly, I do wish the Department of City Planning would have shared their benchmarks with us before sharing them with developers. But that's what happened. But as the community board, I kind of think we need to look for private applicants to be as close to the Mcrown framework as possible for us to be able to support. Otherwise, as I said, I think we risk losing control of the density on Atlantic Avenue, possibly losing community support, and I don't see the upside in these two projects justifies all of that at this point. My own personal view.
Thank you, Mr. Bocconi. We don't have any action items on our agenda for this evening, and it's already 7:30. So I am looking to close the meeting with a reminder that the Land Use Committee meets on the first Thursday of every month. We will have a number of action items. We have one very large discussion item that's been put forward by the City Council Speaker. That material was sent around to the Land Use Committee earlier on a plan for the city every 10 years to upzone across the city. So that was very interesting. And I think just throwing darts at the board, but I want to point out that document for you. Links were in the emails that were sent out, and to ask you all to look at that. We also have a ULURP item coming up for 991 Sterling Place, and I ask you to be prepared for our next meeting. We have a minute. There is a Laszlo Syrop that may have a question. Please identify yourself and ask your question, sir. Ma'am, sir. Hello, are you there? You're up. No question. Okay. Well, Mr. Mickelstein, I did ask the question. If there's nothing else, I'm going. Oh, Kathy's raising her hand. You have a final statement? Kathy, go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Tyus, and thank you, everybody, Ellie and the other people who presented, and DCP and everybody. Is it possible, as a result of this conversation this evening, that we add to the Land Use Committee agenda adopting and or at least discussing to adopt a resolution that addresses some of what Gib just said, that we as a community board have a policy of, I don't want to rephrase what Gib said because he said it so well and I won't do the same, but I think that should be an item added to the agenda for the Land Use Committee. I would suggest that if possible, that we consider.
Are you asking for reaffirmation of our current resolution?
Well, it seems that that's how the generation of this meeting was. I mean, I think I was the person who asked the question at the last land use meeting is what's the framework in which we're supposed to be judging these, evaluating these proposals? And if we come to an agreement and reiterate our position, I think that would be healthy. As you said, there's strength in numbers. Maybe
right. Yeah, I would ask you to refresh your acquaintance with what our resolution says as a community board. And I see that Gib had raised his hand. Maybe he wants to give a short bullet point on that, and then we can close.
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement with Ms. Tyus on this point. The community board does have a resolution with respect to Mcrown. Although I understand Kathy's point too. Should we, should we specifically say that we're looking that private applicants should consider the community board's resolution as guidance when submitting applications, and that we could do that. I think it should be self-evident, but we could do that too. I think that's a land use discussion, but the community board has an adopted resolution. It's absolutely clear, and it hasn't been changed. It's possible in this meeting somebody would have said, either one of the land use committee members or the community board members or somebody else may have said, listen, maybe we should rethink this and we should consider, opening the whole thing up again. I didn't hear that tonight. So that's kind of where I was coming from.
Thank you, Mr. Bocconi. I don't see anything else in the chat. So I'm going to thank you all again for coming, and hope to see you first Thursday at the Land Use Committee meeting. And please do your homework. Unless there's anything else.
We have to make do we have to make a motion to adjourn, or no, we don't need to make a motion?
I'll leave that for you, Mr. Puka.
All right, make a motion to adjourn, and everybody have their dinner.
Thank you all very much for attending, and thank you to Julia. And Julia, if you could please email me the attendance, I would be most grateful.
Absolutely. When I stop into the office tomorrow and have access to a proper computer with a mouse, I will get you the attendance. Tomorrow by about 1 or 2, I'll send it to you.
Thank you, Ms. Neal. Good night, all.